Welcome to the Kentucky Derby edition of the In the Money podcast for KeenelandSelect.com. Tom Leach, along with Jim Goodman, Keeneland's Director of Mutuals and Simulcasting. Just a great racing day on Saturday. Lots of fantastic races leading up to the Grade 1 Kentucky Derby, which is the 12th race. The stakes races start in the 6th with the Grade 2 Churchill Distaff Turf Mile. We both think Tepin's a single in there. So we'll move on to the 7th race to start our analysis. That begins the pick 6. It's the Grade 2 Churchill Downs at 7 furlongs for 4-year-olds and up. And you've got a couple of horses that have been very impressive. Jim here at Keeneland, Limousine Liberal at this meet in his prep for this, and then Speightster, who just blew their doors off breaking his maiden here last April and went on to a couple of more big races after that, but hasn't run since last summer. How do you see the Churchill Downs?
And you picked my second and third choices there. Salutos Amigos is the 8 horse, and my pick here, the winner of the Grade 1 Carter last out. Perfectly drawn on the outside to track the speed, 3 for 8 at the distance. The only negative is that he has not been at Churchill Downs. Speightster, the 6, has lots of upside with only 3 lifetime starts with a buyer progression of 90, 98, 104, but it's been off since July. Limousine Liberal, 1 for 1 at Churchill, just won at Keeneland with a 100 buyer, and the only bad race in the career was a Breeders' Cup Sprint, so he had an excuse that day for just a little over his head that day, but it looks really good. Kobe's back, the 1, and Calculator, the 2 are also contenders. But my pick in here would be Salutos Amigos. A little bit bothered by the fact that he hadn't been at Churchill Downs. Speightster got lots of upside. So that would be my pick there, Salutos Amigos, the 8 over the 5, 6, 1, 2.
I like both of the horses I mentioned that are lightly raced 4-year-olds that I think still have a lot of upside left. I'm going to take the 5 Limousine Liberal. Was really impressed with his race at Keeneland, and it was a very easy win, so should be a perfect setup for this. Speightster, very dangerous as well for Bill Mott off the layoff. Mott's often good on these big days. And then underneath there are a couple of prices that I like. Catalina Red, I thought, got a good prep for this, and the fact that the trainer picked this spot, this horse is 15 to 1. I think this horse I could see hitting the board, certainly. The 4 Barbados, 12 to 1 on the morning line, I like a little bit. The 3 Calculator, I think, is a live contender in here. So the way I would play it, Limousine Liberal's the win pick, but for an exacta, I'd take the 5, 6 over the 5, 6, 3, 4, 9, and try to get a couple of prices in here to get it started off for me in the Churchill Downs. The 8th race is the Grade 1 Humana Distaff for fillies and mares 4 and up going 7 furlongs. I like Wavell Avenue in here a lot. Comes out of that ultra-tough Madison, the opening weekend of the Keeneland meet. Had to need that race off the layoff. Back to the regular rider here, Rosario, for this horse. And from all accounts, has just looked sensational in training over at Churchill Downs. So I like Wavell Avenue a lot in here. Got to use Terrace, I think. Bird at the Wire. We've talked before. I think that horse, she's going to be better as a one-turn, long sprinter going one turn. And then Spelling again, I think, is dangerous at a price for Brad Cox. Didn't have the greatest of trips here at Keeneland. But I like Wavell Avenue a lot. How about you?
There are times we do this podcast and we completely disagree, and we don't share notes beforehand, but the 3 horses you mentioned are the 3 top picks for me. Wavell Avenue is my top pick, the 10. Obviously needed the race in the Madison. That was a great race, if you remember. Had 5 Grade 1s in it. And winner of the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. She's got all the back class, so I'm going to take her on top. I think Terrace has a shot, 2 for 4 at the distance, but will the Santa Anita form transfer over to Churchill? My long shot play is Spelling again, the 4 horse, 2 for 2 Churchill Downs, Brad Cox, and had a lot of trouble in the Madison. So I think Spelling again has a real shot. The only horse you didn't mention that I care for is Stonetastic, the 2, and has won the last 2 at Gulfstream Park very easily. And a lot of times at Gulfstream Park, form does transfer to Churchill. So Stonetastic would be my 4th choice in there. But Wavell Avenue, the 10, over the 2, 4, 8 with probably all, because you could get a price in that 3rd spot.
That race, by the way, starts the pick 5, and then there's a pick 4 that starts with the 9th race, which is our next one, the Grade 2 American Turf. This is 3-year-olds going a mile and a 16th on the grass. You got the horse that won the Transylvania here, Shakimat, in there. You got Aero Force, who won the Kentucky Jockey Club on the dirt last fall, was 2nd in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf race here. Other strong contenders, just a deep bunch. How did you sort them out?
This is another race that you look at it and you just you can't eliminate a lot of horses here, but Shakimat is my choice. And if you can get 5 to 1 with Emma Jane Wilson, that race in the Transylvania was absolutely outstanding. And he won as easily as you'll ever see anybody win here. He kind of touched the rail as he came down the stretch, but One pulled off at a 91 buyer. That's not back-to-back 91 buyers at Woodbine off the poly track and then back to the turf at Keeneland. I think Shocky Mott's a really good choice here in the American turf. Air Force goes back to the turf after a couple of failed dirt experiments and even trying on the poly track at Turfway. I think Air Force is much, much better on the turf and has a real shot. The one horse Converge was Chad Brown. Chad, we've talked about Chad during the Keeneland meet, was very cold. He's due to pull off some wins here, and I think that his horse has a shot. He was bothered at the start in Transylvania, really never had a shot. And the other horse that ships in from West Coast with Mike Smith, you've always got to take a look at Mike Smith on big days. And Dressed in Hermes has a shot based on the form he's had out there. He won the Pasadena. He finished up the stretch in the RB Lewis, but More Spirit won that, and More Spirit, of course, is in the big race a little bit later on. So my pick would be Shocky Mott the 8 over the 1-3-11.
I took Shocky Mott as well. I thought it was interesting that Roger Atfield decides to take this horse here. A lot of times you'll see Atfield win a race or put a point horse to a race at Keeneland and then use that for something that he's pointing for at Woodbine. But this horse stays around and comes over on Kentucky Derby Day to run in the stake for 3-year-olds on the turf. Also, Atfield's 26% in the second off this kind of a more than 6-month layoff. And from all accounts, this horse has looked sensational as he's prepared to run in this engagement. So I like Shocky Mott, but I think Aero Force is a real strong contender. I almost went that way. So I think one of those two, I think, wins this. Camelot Kitten, Converge, and Beach Patrol are the others I would use. But if I was playing a pick 6, I could live with just taking Shocky Mott and Aero Force here, even though I think there's a lot of talent in this race. 10th race is the Grade 3 Pat Day Mile. This is 3-year-olds going a flat mile, and they got a nice big field in here. And I like a horse that has made only one start, and that's American Freedom, the 11. This horse had a 98 buyer in its debut, and normally I would lean toward more accomplished horses. This horse is facing rivals coming out of multiple graded stakes races, but it's Bob Baffert. And we've seen Baffert bring these horses along with his Derby horse before, and when he does, they're usually very well meant. So on that thinking, I'm going to take American Freedom in here. Don't like him enough because of the inexperience to single, but I like American Freedom to win. I think Star Hill's a horse with a lot of talent, the 13. So I want him on my ticket. Unbridled Outlaw for Romans. I know they're real high on that horse. And then Discreetness, who was trying to get into the Derby and couldn't. I'm going to take those 3, but keying around American Freedom in the Pat Day Mile for me. How about you, Jim?
Okay, I think this one's wide open because I don't like any of those horses. I have a pick here that's a little bit shaky. I like Sharp Azteca for Jorge Navarro, horse coming out of Gulfstream with a whole lot of speed. I'm betting that he's going to be quicker than Imperial Hint. Those are the two that are going to go to the lead, and the Imperial Hint looks really good coming out of Tampa. Not sure about what he beat there. He won so easily. But Sharp Azteca is my pick here just because I think that those two horses have the most speed in the race, and one of them's going to clear, and I think they got a shot at going wire to wire in the mile. For Ovamo exits the Louisiana Derby after a huge win in the Grade 2 Risen Star. He didn't a huge run. Almost got to Gunrunner. He finished a half length behind Gunrunner at 40-1. You got to say he's got a shot in here with Giroux now. Maybe he pulls off the double with the Pat Day Mile and the Derby a little bit later on. But I think For Ovamo has a shot. I think Fellowship, the 9, ran within 4 lengths of Nyquist to the Grade 1 Florida Derby. And Cocked and Loaded, the 10, is 1-for-1 at Churchill. Obviously needed the last at Aqueduct. So I've got 4 or 5 horses there that you didn't even mention, Tom. So this one may be an all, but very shaky pick, Sharp Azteca, the 6.
Gives you an idea of how wide open this one might be. Move to the 11th race now. It's the Grade 1 Woodford Reserve Turf Classic, going a mile and an 8 on the grass. Should be firm. 4-year-olds and up. Deep field here. You've got horses like Slumber and Big Blue Kitten who are coming off layoffs for Chad Brown, but have a lot of class. The Visadero won on Derby Day last year. You've got Tourist coming out of a Grade 1 here at Keeneland. Who did you see getting home first in the Woodford Reserve Turf Classic?
It was so difficult to separate Slumber and Big Blue Kitten. They run within a length of each other almost consistently, and then they've got a couple wins each. The Visadero scares me a lot. I think Buff Bradley has this horse ready, and maybe this is the Grade 1 that he wins. He's got a world of talent, and he's always right there. I like Bolo, the 3 on the turf, but this might be a big step up. Florent Giroux gets off Chocolate Ride to ride Tourist. And I know you've been high on Tourist in the past. Bill Mott gets them ready. I just think Tourist is sitting on a big race here, and this is a tough race. It's a nice turf race, Grade 1, right before the Derby. I'm going to take Tourist. I'm going to take a shot here, and if I were singling in a pick 4, I would probably single Tourist. I feel that good about his chances. He's going the right direction. Bill Mott is the best in the world, and I think Giroux takes this off Chocolate Ride, and I think that's a huge key as well. But I can make a case for Slumber and Big Blue Kitten and Divisadero. I would take Tourist on top of those 3 and throw Bolo in the mix as well.
Tourist and Bolo were the 2 that I was going back and forth on, and I ended up going to Tourist, and the switch to Giroux was one of the things I had written down as a reason why. The other thing, this horse, first off the bench, matched his career high figure, and I thought that was encouraging. Improvement off that makes him pretty salty in here. Normally a horse that has excelled at a mile, they've kept him mostly at that mile distance, but they're stretching him out here another furlong. But he's done that before, so it's not like it's totally foreign to him. So I'm going to take Tourist as well, but definitely I like Bolo a lot off that 106 buyer, 2 back. Divisadero I think is very dangerous. So's World Approval, the 11. I think that the 2 lower prices on the morning line, Slumber and Big Blue Kitten, if you want to go deep in multi-race bets, you could certainly make a strong case for including them. But I think those lower priced horses, those 2 in particular, are vulnerable off the layoff, being as old as they are. And I think Tourist, Bolo in particular, but Divisadero, World Approval are all live horses at a better price in the Woodford Reserve Turf Classic. But Tourist is going to be my pick. Gets us to the Grade 1 Kentucky Derby at 1.25 miles. 20 of them, and it's by you listen to a lot of the pundits, Jim, and nobody seems to have a real clear opinion. Do you?
That's a loaded question. I do have a clear opinion, and I know it's not sexy to take the favorite in the Kentucky Derby. I just don't understand why Nyquist is not getting more hype. I think that maybe it's a function of American Pharaoh was so good last year, and California Chrome was so good the year before. And I put on my tip sheet that in Keeneland Select, if you remember 1977, 78, and 79, we had Seattle Slew affirmed a spectacular bid within just a bad break of having 3 Triple Crown winners in a row. I think Nyquist has done everything that he's been asked to do. He's beaten Mohaymen on his home court at the Florida Derby, stripped across country. He overcame the 13 post here at Keeneland in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year. I just don't think he's got any flaws, and I think Doug O'Neill kept him here at Keeneland. He trained. He had one little glitch with some blood issues, but he trained on the synthetic. He didn't miss a beat. I think Nyquist is a deserving 5-2, and if I get 7-2 or 4-1 on him, I'm going to bet him. Having said that, I think Gunrunner is the horse that could get a perfect trip. I was really amazed that the 4 horses inside Gunrunner, the 1, 2, 3, 4, are all closers. So it doesn't make any difference at all. He's going to get to the lead or get a clear run to the first turn. And also, my man Sam is in the 6 hole. He's got all the speed is to his outside, and I think Florent Giroux just got really lucky on this post position draw. I really like Gunrunner. I think he's got to step up from the Louisiana Derby. The 91 buyer doesn't impress me that much, but he didn't have to run faster than that. He won by 3.5. So he takes a step forward. I think he's right there. Exaggerator, if you think he's a wet track freak, you toss him. He may not be a wet track freak. He may be, Desormeaux may just have him where he needs to be, and he could have won the Sunday Derby by daylight, even on a fast track. If that's the truth, and we're going to get a fast track on Derby Day, he could be right there. Mohaymen, if you draw a line through his Florida Derby, he could be the favorite here. But he did not run well in Florida Derby. I'm thinking Kieran may not have had him cranked all the way, caught a sticky track, had a wide trip, and Nyquist was really good that day. So I'm going to throw Mohaymen in there. More Spirit, you never underestimate Baffert. I think Exaggerator is better than More Spirit, though, when they're head-to-head. And Brody's Cause, because of the win here in the Bluegrass, I've got to include him. I've got to pull for him. I've got to pull for Dale Romans. It would be a great story if Dale Romans were to win the Derby. he's got to step up as well. I'm going to take Nyquist, the 13. I'm going to use Gunrunner, the 5, Exaggerator, the 11, Mohaymen, the 14, and probably Whitmore, the 10. Seems to be right there, but he can't close the deal. I think he's got a shot getting the money. More Spirit underneath and Brody's Cause underneath. Ever how much you can afford, but I think Nyquist on top, Saver with Gunrunner on top. That's the way I'm going to bet the Derby.
Exaggerator's the one I'm going to. I saw a stat where Exaggerator's winning margin, better than 6 lengths, was the 6th greatest winning margin in the Santa Anita Derby, race with a lot of history. And he did it against certainly the most accomplished field in any of the Derby preps. Of the 5 horses that won the Santa Anita Derby by greater margins, 4 of them won the Kentucky Derby. The other one was Flying Pacer, who had the misfortune of being born the same year as Spectacular Bid. So I thought that was a strong stat. I think this horse it wasn't just the wet track. I think he's peaking at the right time. I like the 103 buyer. California horses back to last summer have dominated on the road to the Derby. You could do worse than doing a 4-horse box of the horses that have been based in California for most of, if not all of their careers. But Exaggerator is going to be my pick. I like Sudden Breaking News for a price coming out of the 2-hole by Mineshaft out of an Afleet Alex mare. I think this horse is really well bred for the 1.25 miles and going to be finishing strong. I just don't know if he can get there. Brody's Cause, I like the fact that he's won at Churchill. Watched him train a little bit this week and really looks strong. So I think he's going to run a good race. Just don't know if he'll be good enough to get there. Creator's the next one I like. So probably the first ticket I'll play is a 4-horse box of those 4. Those are my top 4. The next one for me is probably More Spirit, then maybe Nyquist, and then maybe Mahesto I might play around with a little bit in the bottom of a superfecta of a try. But Exaggerator is going to be the win pick for me. And if I'm playing an Oaks Derby double, I'm going to use the ones I mentioned in a Friday podcast for the Oaks, back to Exaggerator, Sudden Breaking News, and probably Brody's Cause. I'll use those top 3 in here. Best of luck with your wagers on the Kentucky Derby. And remember that if you're staying here in Lexington, you've got options at the Red Mile and the Kentucky Horse Park, as well as the day of racing and simulcasting at Keeneland. For Jim Goodman, I'm Tom Leach, and that's the In the Money podcast for KeenelandSelect.com.